Hi BookTube and welcome to Tag Tuesday. I was tagged in the spoiler tag by Sean the Book Maniac, so thank you Sean, and it was originated by Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and I will post links to both of their videos below. So questions. 1. What do you consider a spoiler? Well, I have to admit, before BookTube I'd never even heard the word spoiler, if you can believe that, because I didn't really share my reading experiences with anybody until BookTube, so I couldn't spoil it for anyone because I wasn't talking to anyone about books really. Now it's a complicated question, it's very subjective, as Sean says. So for example, for me it's quite hard to spoil a book because I associate the concept of spoiler with events and incidents in a book, and endings, of course. The first thing is that endings are almost uniformly rubbish, so apart from the out of context thing of someone telling you the ending before you've read it, it wouldn't spoil it. And in terms of incidents and events, I see them as illustrating, illuminating the characters and the relationships. So it's not the events themselves that are significant, it's what they tell us about the relationships. And unless the spoiler is someone going into great detail showing how, so let's say the incident is someone falls off a ladder and breaks their leg. So if someone told me that happened in a novel, it wouldn't even register as significant. But if they then drill down into the knock-on effects that had in their marriage, their emotional life, health insurance battles, or all that sort of stuff, I guess that would be a spoiler. But people don't do that on the whole. So to me, the concept of a spoiler doesn't sort of carry much weight, although as a booktuber I have to be aware of not providing them myself as much as possible. So whatever my scale is, I can't apply that necessarily to the videos I make talking about books. 2. Does the genre you're reading in impact what you consider to be a spoiler? Well, I don't read genre. And as I say, endings don't really sort of move me that much. So as a reader, I'm not reading genre, therefore I can't say that the genre makes a difference. 3. All the best bits are in the trailer. Sometimes the synopsis can be too detailed. Do you research books prior to reading them, or do you go in blind? Well, with the vast majority of books I read, the 2 sources of information that alerts me to their existence. One is I've seen someone on BookTube talk about them, and the second is I've come to them by some association of authors, other authors, maybe citing this author in an interview or something, or citing this book as being influential. And in that case, the only pre-research I will do is to read the blurb. I can't imagine I buy many books without reading the blurb, so I guess the blurb is quite significant for me. And it's not, as Sean pointed out, so many blurbs are so overwritten and hyperbolic, so it's not that grabs me. There'll be a word in about the theme or something in the formalist style of the book that's what I'll glom onto, and that'll go, oh yeah, this sounds like it could be a book for me. Prompt 4. Sometimes the introduction of translators' notes can spoil the ending, especially for classics. Has this ever happened to you? Well, this is a good question, because whenever there's an introduction in a book, I feel beholden to read it. I feel it's part of the text itself, even though obviously it's by a different author. And I've done this for years, and yes, many a time it has spoiled it for me. And I've only just weaned myself off of flicking past the pages which are numbered in Roman numerals to get to page 3 or 5 or wherever the book proper starts. So that's the first thing. But there are occasions where also I've read the introduction, I've gone back and read the introduction and thought, I don't recognise the book I've just read from this introduction. So sometimes they're helpful. More often than not I find they're not terribly helpful. But as to spoiler, yeah, possibly. But as I say, I managed to wean myself off the whole thing now. 5. Name a time somebody spoiled a novel for you. Never, because as I say, before I came onto BookTube, I never was in a position to discuss books with people, or the books I was reading, I should say. And booktubers, since I've joined BookTube, booktubers on the whole are very good at not giving away spoilers, really. So, never. The only time a novel will be spoiled for me is when I've hate read a novel and then I discuss it with someone online or social media and they're a rabid defender of it. Then that spoils my hatred of the book, because I can't have it pure, unalloyed hatred, which is my pleasure derived from it. That's not really the spirit in which this question is framed, I suspect. 7. If spoilers ruin novel... Oh, sorry, have you ever spoiled a novel? This is 6. Have you ever spoiled a novel for somebody else? You'd have to ask my viewers, but I do talk about books in probably greater length than the average booktuber. So, for example, I've just... a couple of days ago, uploaded a 30-minute long video talking about a Larry Kramer novel, which is 880 pages. So actually, pages to length of my review is not so great. But obviously, if you're taking 30 minutes to talk about a book, you're delving deeply into it. And I tend to talk about images, themes, language style. I think if I gave away stuff about the formal style of it, as I did for another book that will appear in a review on Monday or possibly Sunday, called Little Scratch by Rebecca Watson, which is all about the style, because it's all about how it's laid out on the page and why it's done like that. I think, apart from the fact it sort of talks about that in the blurb and in the sort of blurb quotes from other authors, so in that sense I'm not spoiling it. But I would have to talk about that in order to talk about the book. So I don't think I'm spoiling it. I think when you're talking about specific images and metaphors, you can take the gloss off of them by sort of talking about them, and then when the person comes to read it themselves, they think, oh yeah, I've already heard it was this. So I don't know the answer as to how much I provide spoilers. They're not plot spoilers, but they can in discussing at length certain things within a book, not plot related. I can see that possibly it would spoil it. 7. If spoilers ruin novels, are there some authors or genres you can't reread? Well, I don't really reread. I limit myself to 2 a year, which sounds very sort of formal and restrictive, but I do. And I had already pre-planned the 2 rereads for this year, but actually I don't think I'm going to reread either of them. So originally it was going to be Murakami's Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World, and William Burroughs' Cities of the Red Knights. But then an opportunity for a buddy read cropped up with Roxy for a Neil Bartlett novel called Who Was That Man?, about Oscar Wilde, and comparing Wilde's London of the 1880s and being gay with Neil Bartlett's in the 1980s during the height of the AIDS epidemic, homophobic legislation from local government, all this sort of stuff. And it's one of my favourite books, but I haven't read it for 30 years. About maybe even 40, but 30, 40 years. And it just seemed a great opportunity to revisit that book. So that we just need to fix a time when we're going to do that, but that's definitely going to happen. And then if I was forced to choose between which of my original 2, I'm not sure I can. I think I might just push them both back to next year's rereads, in which case I may only reread 1 book this year and not 2. So in terms of spoilers, I guess if you know how a novel goes from beginning to end, that might be a spoiler, but that's not someone else ruining for you. That's just because you've read it. But equally, there are plenty of books that would merit a rereading because you'd get a lot more out of it, because during your first read through and trying to sort of piece together how the thing worked, you probably weren't getting a lot of the detail around that. So yeah, swings and roundabouts on rereads. 8. When reviewing, are you spoiler free? Does this limit your ability to discuss? Well, as I sort of mentioned in talking about it, I don't think any booktubers can guarantee to be spoiler free if they say more than 1 sentence about a book, because someone may have their pleasure spoiled by something mentioned even within 1 sentence. So I've got in quite sort of how my approach to it. Does it limit your ability to discuss? Well, it does and it doesn't. I mean, I never plan my videos. I don't script them, so I'm not thinking consciously about spoilers, you know, while I'm talking. But I'm aware of them enough to know that there's certain points in novels you can go up to talking about, but then when the big twist happens or whatever, you can't get into that. And I do consciously say I can't say more about this because of spoilers. So that's my approach to it. Shout out. Tell us about 5 channels you enjoy and then tag them. Elizabeth at Bookish North, Celia at Celia, Sina at Beating Around the Books, Kathy Grimm, and Courtney at Courtney Ferreter. Okay, so thanks very much to Sean for tagging me. Till next time.